Let's face it, nobody likes a sore loser, because you know what, there's a sure dignity in taking your lumps and accepting defeat whenever it comes around. But the rules are a little different where life or death stakes are concerned, and grace, well, basically goes out of the window. And this was evidenced by these 8 video game bosses, each of which tried to cheekily off you even once their goose was already firmly cooked. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 video game bosses that kill you from beyond the grave. Number 8, Nuclear Armadillo. Ninja Gaiden 2. Now, there's no dick move in a boss battle quite like a big bad who's a total sore loser and decides to just torch the earth as they shuffle off their mortal coil. And that's exactly what happens with Ninja Gaiden 2's appropriately monikered git of a boss, the Nuclear Armadillo. Even if you're able to deplete the fire-spewing abomination's health bars to 0, which is no easy feat to begin with, there's one cheeky final surprise that is lying in wait: a damn nuclear detonation. That's right, after dropping down dead, the Nuclear Armadillo fulfills the eventuality of its name by near instantly self-destructing, and in turn taking bamboozled players with it, causing instant death to the unprepared. And because nothing in a Ninja Gaiden game is ever easy, this of course forces you to start the entire battle from the very beginning. Hilariously though, the means of surviving the blast are almost so mind-bogglingly simple, you couldn't be remotely blamed for even failing to consider it. All you need to do is hold down the block button, and this will inexplicably allow you to withstand the detonation, taking not even a shred of damage from the awesome-looking blast. I mean, there's video game logic, and then there's whatever the fresh hell this nonsense was. Number 7, The Father. Hotline Miami. The final boss of Jacket's campaign in Hotline Miami is a Russian mob boss known as the Father. After killing his bodyguard and the 2 panthers, yes, that is right, panthers, that he sicks on you, it's time to get down to business. Now, what passes for a boss battle here amounts to avoiding the Father's hail of machine gun fire and then disarming him of both guns, at which point some dialogue will then be triggered. Before you can continue the fight, the Father announces that he can see the way things are going and decides to spare you the pleasure of sending him to his maker yourself. And with that, the Father blows his own brains out with a concealed pistol, ending the chapter. However, if you're unlucky enough to be standing on the right-hand side of the screen, it is entirely possible for the Father's final bullet to strike and kill you after passing through his head. While in reality, a human head would certainly stop a bullet's momentum, or at least change the direction of it, Hotline Miami isn't too tethered in our own physical reality quite so faithfully. And so, if you're stood in the wrong spot, the Father can deliver a perverse final parting gift by inadvertently taking you with him. Poetry. Number 6, Colossus, Soul Calibur 3. In Soul Calibur 3, players can do battle with Colossus, a gigantic stone statue that is a solid 5 times the size of their character and can make short work of you with 2 or 3 well-placed hits. But even players who manage to fell the literally granite-carved beast are in for a final nasty surprise, and that is the unfortunate reality of gravity. Chip away at the Colossus's life bar until it's all gone, and it'll immediately fall to the floor, which is certainly less than ideal if you happen to be standing directly in front of it, which chances are you probably are. In which case, you'll be instantly crushed by the full weight of the Colossus's hefty frame, causing an immediate KO. To rub salt in the wound, Colossus will then be awarded the victory because the game didn't register him as being KO'd until his body has actually fully hit the floor, by which point you'll have already been smushed into a red smear by the momentum of his toppling body. Number 5, Star Dream Soul OS, Kirby Planet Robobot. The true final boss in Kirby Planet Robobot is Star Dream Soul OS, a veritable piss-take of a combatant who must be battled across 4 separate phases, which will take most players a solid 15 minutes or so. And even then, there's a reason that the in-game bio for this boss gives it a 99.99% chance of beating you, and that's because it's got one final trick up its sleeve once you've killed it. In its dying moments, Star Dream Soul OS will unleash 3 pink shockwaves across various areas of the screen. Beyond being totally unblockable, these shockwaves will immediately wipe the overwhelming majority of Kirby's life bar out upon contact, ensuring that anybody who isn't at full health will be met with an instant game over. Given that the battle has no checkpoints and therefore forces you to start the entire thing from the very beginning each time you die, it's pretty much the thinly veiled digital equivalent of the developers sticking 2 defiant middle fingers up at you. You thought that a Kirby game was going to be easy? Idiot. Number 4, Sister Frida, Dark Souls 3. Now, From Software are big fans of faking players out with seemingly dead bosses who just come back for another round. I mean, looking at you, Sekiro's guardian ape, but in the case of Dark Souls 3's sister Frida, she does technically drop down dead before getting a little help from a rather big friend. Now, if you're good enough to defeat the sister, a cutscene will trigger where she will quite unambiguously keel over and seemingly start bleeding out. A few seconds later, though, it's clear that something else is happening, and her devastated pal, Father Ariandel, will throw a biblical temper tantrum, setting the place on fire and resurrecting the sister because why the hell not? And with that, the surprise second phase of the fight begins, as you're forced to take on both the sister and the father at the same time. And even once they're both dealt with, there's a third phase where the sister returns again, this time as Black Flame Frida. Now, it's no understatement to say that this boss fight is maddening, a pure act of sadism on the part of From Software, enough so that you're probably guaranteed to die at least a few dozen times in the second phase and especially third phases before finally prevailing. It's a divisive boss fight for a particular reason. You think you can put the controller down and relax for even a second? No, my friend, we're just getting started. Number 3, Grundfeldbach, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines will eventually see you face off against vampire hunter Grundfeldbach. And while the ensuing boss fight isn't particularly challenging, what follows just might catch you with your kecks down. You see, once the vampire hunter has been defeated, you'll need to track down Dr. Ingvar Johansson inside the building. After some chin-wagging with him, you'll be instructed to exit the area, only to be greeted by a hunched-over but not quite dead Grunfeld. More to the point, before he kicks the bucket entirely, he detonates a series of explosives in an attempt to destroy the entire facility, with you in it no less. At this point, you've got a mere 60 seconds, a whole-ass minute, to hightail it out of here back to your waiting boat. And while most players should get there with about 10 seconds to spare, if you make any mistakes at all, you're going to be buried alongside this guy, the absolute cheeky rotter. There's a very specific brand of douchebaggery at play here, that he simply couldn't face the thought of you surviving whilst he didn't. Number 2, El Gigante, Resident Evil 4. The original version of Resident Evil 4 features a few undeniably hilarious ways for bosses to kill you from beyond the grave. For one, Lake Monster Del Lago can drag you down into the lake's watery depths as it dies if you don't quickly complete the QTE to cut away the rope that is now attaching to your leg. Elsewhere, the troll-like monster El Gigante can borrow a page from the playbook of Soul Calibur 3's Colossus by falling on Leon post-defeat and immediately crushing him to death. But perhaps the game's greatest you occurs later on when Leon battles the El Gigante twins at the furnace. Basically, you can make short work of either of the beasts by getting them to stand on a platform in the middle of the room and hitting a switch, causing said platform to give way, sending the oversized lug falling into the fiery molten steel below. You'll then get to savour one of the El Gigantes helplessly thrashing around for a few seconds, as if doing its best impression of the T-1000 at the end of the Terminator 2 film, before disappearing into the drink. Well, that is, unless you stand a bit too close to the edge of the platform. Because here your overconfidence will be soundly rewarded with the creature using the last vestige of its dying energy to sweep a hand across the deck and pick you up. As it sinks below the molten metal, its body being obliterated, Leon's given about a hot second, literally hot in fact, to appreciate his predicament before he too is dragged into the scorch. And number 1, Death, Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. Castlevania Aria of Sorrow's mid-game boss Death is a two-phase battle, where you first take on Death's scythe itself, after which he'll finally step into battle and suddenly conjure a considerably more impressive double-bladed scythe. It's a tricky-ass battle for sure, especially as you need to spend most of the second phase avoiding Death throwing his scythe at you, but even if you last long enough to end him, that's not quite the proper end. You see, even after Death has been killed, burst into flames, and disappears into a vortex, it's still possible for his scythe to kill you as it continues to fly through the air. If you're unlucky enough to be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, the scythe will make a beeline for your face and, if you're in rough enough shape, kill you instantly. Granted, the boss fight as a whole should have probably trained you to be wary of that damn blade at all times, but even once Death himself is gone, there's still a second or two where you're pretty vulnerable to getting got. And there we go, my friends. Those were 8 video game bosses that kill you from beyond the grave. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on the social medias, where it's at RetroJ, but the O is a 0 for both Instagram and X, or Twitter. I'm just going to call it Twitter. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.